Luke 2. Now in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus to register all the empire for taxes. This was the first registration taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Everyone to his own town to be registered. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was the house and family line of David. Now, as you go through the stuff that is here in Luke's gospel, there's a lot of critical scholars who want to discredit everything that Luke is saying, that no, this couldn't have been, there was no census taking when Quirinius was governor of Syria. Now, if I get any of these info wrong, I apologize for that. I didn't just go look it up recently. But then I think they found out he was governor somewhere else, or he's governor on a couple of occasions, and maybe that's what Luke is referring to. Or that Caesar Augustus asked everyone to go to their hometown to be taxed, saying that was never done. Well, they found some things that sound similar to that in some regions. And if Joseph is working as a, pardon the use of this, a migrant worker who is migrating to do work, and he's not living in a permanent residency, maybe he did need to go back to. There's some evidence of things like that happen from time to time. Not necessarily the norm. So Luke might have information that would have been pertinent and available. The other thing is, if what Luke is doing is writing in the memory time frame of people who would have known these things to be completely and blatantly false, and he's just making them up, then the people would not have preserved what he wrote and thought it to be valuable. They would have said, Luke is full of nonsense. He's got all his dates and figures and things wrong. He's making things up. So that if that were the case, they probably wouldn't. Also, is he setting the table for something? I mean, like, there's people who say there's no way he would have been born in Bethlehem. That's a story that comes about later. Like, he's of the house and line of David. So does he actually have to be born in Bethlehem? I don't think, from our thinking of, Bethlehem, the passages about Bethlehem being where he's from, of just being of the house and line of David makes him a child of Bethlehem. He doesn't actually physically have to be born there. Luke's the only one who actually places him there to be born there from that standpoint. So just all of those things, as you hear scholars talk about and say, we have no proof of any of these things, I don't need proof. Okay? Luke wrote it. The early church accepted what Luke wrote as authoritative, as the definitive piece of a story that informs us about Jesus' birth. Therefore, I accept it because the early church accepted it from the person that wrote it. It was handed down to me from those who received it. That's why I accept it as authoritative, not because, I just have to believe it because I have a book called the Bible that says it. No, I believe it because those who handed it down received it from someone that was trustworthy, that they trusted them for relaying the story, and it's been handed down. I hope that makes sense in a distinction there. Okay, moving on. He went to be registered with Mary, who was promised to marriage to him and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. Okay, inn is a horrible translation here. Why did they stick with the inn translation? I'll come back to that in a minute. They didn't do anything on the firstborn. Deliver her child are not in the Greek text, but are supplied. Okay, came time for her to deliver. What else would she be delivering? She's not delivering the paper. She's having a baby. Okay, interesting thing here. So one of the things I just want to point out, and there is in some part of the church believes in the continuous virginity of Mary, meaning she never has relations with a man at all, that Jesus is born and that is through the Holy Spirit, and then she stays devoted to God and does not come to know Joseph in any way. Samus, welcome in. I'm watching you people. Welcome in. Here's one of those things that you have to be able to answer. Why does it say her firstborn son if she only has one? Now, there's a way, because we can go look up that word, and it doesn't have to mean firstborn. I believe it can also mean only son as well. Let's go look that up. So we are in Luke 2:6. Oh, I guess it's 7. Her firstborn, protodoskos. Okay, so firstborn, first begotten, the first of the womb could be, we have it in Matthew, we have it in Luke. Firstborn among the brethren, we have it. So it is a term that is used repeatedly for Jesus. The firstborn which are written in heaven, and God will judge all. So it is a term used repeatedly for Jesus. Is it only Jesus? I knew her time. She called him Jesus, firstborn in Jesus, firstborn among the brethren, firstborn of every creature. I guess that he's the image of the invisible God, so it's still of Jesus. Firstborn from the dead, that is Jesus. And again, when first begotten in the world, and saith, let the angels of God worship him. Through faith, he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood, lest he be destroyed. The firstborn should touch. I'd have to go to Hebrews 11, but I think that is not talking about Jesus there. Okay. Anyway, here's one of those passages that it doesn't absolutely have to be the firstborn, meaning she had more children. It is also a title of prominence there, but it is one of those things to ask. Then we have manger, who is here. Feeding trough. Commonplace. There was no inn. I'll get to chat just a second. Let me finish my thought here. There is okay, here we go. The Greek word is flexible. The usage of the LXX and the New Testament refers to various places of lodging. Most likely, Mary and Joseph sought lodging in a public accommodation in the city of Bethlehem, which would have made a crude shelter for animals. However, it has been suggested by various scholars that Mary and Joseph were staying with relatives in Bethlehem. If this were so, the term would refer to the guest room in a relative's house, which would have been filled to capacity with other relatives. So there's another room that is used for inn by Luke when he tells the story of the Good Samaritan is a different word. It is not the word used here. So this is probably more likely not a going and seeing if there's public housing, but the guest room of the house is filled, and when they're staying with relatives, they have to go stay with the animals is probably the best that could happen. So sorry if that ruins any of your Christmas images, but that is, I think, a best way to understand what's going on in the passage there. Now there were shepherds nearby out in a field keeping guard over their flock at night. And the angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were absolutely terrified. But the angels said to them, do not be afraid. Listen carefully, for I proclaim to you good news that will bring joy to all people. So we have a third occasion of angels. However, this one does not just say Gabriel. It is angels that show up to shepherds who are out in a field keeping watch over their flock at night. Now, trying to place the birth of Jesus at different times of the year. When would shepherds be out in the field keeping watch over their flock by night? Well, I've heard arguments that, well, sheep are born in the spring, and you keep watch over your flock in the spring when sheep are going to be born. However, if you are having a sheep that is supposed to be for the Passover, the lamb that's going to be sacrificed for the Passover lamb is going to be in the fall of the year. So after Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, you're going to have sheep being born in that time of the year. And I don't know the exact numbers, and this is, ancient times. So where are we at? That the sheep would have been bred to have their children at a different time so that the ewes would produce lambs that would be ready for the Passover lamb in the spring, which would put the birth of Jesus in the fall. Okay, I'm not going to get into when is this actually happening. There's lots of things out there. and people who have looked into it, so you can go find a spot to go figure out is when Jesus' birth is supposed to be. We're calculating it when is John's, and then counting back 9 months or forward 9 months, however that works. Anyway, lots of possibilities, or I should say 6 months away from when John is born. There's lots of theories out there. You can do your own research on that, but I just bring it up to say, looking at these things and clues in the text are helpful, but they're not definitive of being able to lock it down. So, the shepherds out in the field told not to be afraid, to listen carefully, that there's good news to bring joy to all people. What is the good news? Today, a Savior is born in the city of David. He is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find the babe wrapped in strips of cloth and lying in a manger. Okay, so strips of cloth. I always liked the swaddling clothes. Strips of cloth and lying in a manger, feeding trough. Okay, so they didn't go over the strips of cloth. So that's verse 12. Swaddling clothes. See, I always heard that swaddling clothes, the word here was also a word used for the grave clothes that you would wrap someone in. Sparganoo. It's only used of Ezekiel and of Luke. So we just have these swaddling clothes. And swaddling, it'd be the word used for what you do with a baby. You swaddle them. So I don't know. I think I heard that as a child, that was like grave clothes that he was wrapped in. That doesn't really make sense. You know, it was like one of these things that's going to tie his birth to his death, and that's fun. But one of those things is go investigate when you hear those things. Find where the evidence is. Follow the trail. And I don't find the trail that shows that whatsoever. So just point that out, because if you've heard the same thing, but strips of cloth just sounds like whatever. But the odd thing for the shepherds to find is a baby lying in a manger. That's not normal. That's the baby you're looking for. Find a baby in a manger. Okay. Samus, you got a phone call, so you couldn't respond right away, but I think it's rude that no one was willing to take their place in the animal house, considering that Mary was very pregnant. Well, we also don't know what time of night that they arrived. So if they are arriving after everyone is in bed, it would be difficult, and it would not be customary to go raise other people and rouse them from their beds in the middle of the night. So there's more ways at which this might be better hospitality, but I get you. It also doesn't, like, we have the image of the innkeeper telling them to go do that because we've written it into stories. It only says, we're at verse 14. And she gave birth to the firstborn son, wrapped him in cloth, and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the guest house. There's nothing here about somebody directing them to her to go to the manger, to go where the animals stay. It could have been Joseph had the initiative to say, we can go here, I'll provide, we'll be able to. So it could be under Joseph's direction to do this, not the rest of the household doing it. It's just telling us what happened, not who forced them to go do that. So, but good observation, Samus. I appreciate that. Okay, so the angels show up and they tell all of this, and now they say, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among people with whom he is pleased. Which is an interesting phrase there. That's not how I've usually heard it. Most witnesses have goodwill among people instead of among people in whom he is pleased. Oh, there is this isn't just a translation. There's a variance there. I didn't know that. Most of the Italo witnesses and some of the other version witnesses reflect the Greek text, which has the genitive but drops the preposition. Not only is a genitive reading better attested, but it is more difficult than the nominative. Okay, these are Greek cases in case you don't know that. Like present and future, they have nominative and they have genitive. The meaning seems to be not that divine peace will be bestowed only where human goodwill is already present, but that the birth of the Savior's God's peace rests on those whom he has chosen in accord with his good pleasure. Earth, peace among those in whom God is pleased, because the birth of the Son has happened. Yeah. Perhaps she could have went into labor before they found lodging and just went to where they could. Yep. Yeah, and Luke is just telling the story, and we're so familiar with it, and more than we're familiar with the story, we're familiar with all of the Christmas pageants, and we're familiar with all the Christmas cards, and so we have all of the images in our mind, which may not be accurate to the text. When the angels left them, they went back to heaven. The shepherds said to one another, "Let us go over to Bethlehem and see the thing that has taken place, that the Lord has made known to us." So they hurried off and located Mary and Joseph and found the baby lying in the manger. This is what I want to know. How did they find him? Like, if this is a guest room and you're within the house where the animals are, how are you finding the baby? If it's more of a stable that we imagine, how are they still finding the baby? If it's the image that we have of a cave that comes from later manuscripts, how are they, like, there's no clue as to how they find the baby. They just find him. When they saw him, they relayed what had happened, what had been told about the child, and all they had heard, and were astonished at what the shepherd said. But Mary treasured up all these things, pondering in her heart what they meant. Okay, all who heard were astonished. Who are the all who heard? Would it just be Mary and Joseph, or are there other people awake in the house? Was there a midwife? Was there other family members from the household who had helped Mary deliver the child that might have been present? And Mary is pondering things. We have an image of Mary. She wonders about the words that are said. She now is pondering the story that has given. So Mary is pondering all of these things. That's one of the things that happens. Mary has encounters. She's pondering these things. She's storing them up, which is one of the things that then comes out throughout Luke as he is telling the stories. He has prominence of women throughout the stories. If you want to notice a couple of themes in Luke, is that women play prominent roles in the stories in Luke. The other thing is that there is a lot of meals. We haven't got to the meals yet, but Jesus basically eats his way through the gospel, one meal to the next. Okay. Mary treasured up, pondered these things. So the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all that they had heard and seen. Everything was just as they were told. Okay, I thought it was they went everywhere shouting it. There's the image I have. Like, I'm thinking they woke people up, but they returned glorifying and praising God. Okay, so they just returned, but they're doing it out loud. Sure, they probably ran into some people on their way, but they're going back to watch their sheep with the great story that they have to tell people. At the end of 8 days, when he was circumcised, he was named Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. So again, we have parallels between John and Jesus going on. Now, when the time came for purification according to the law of Moses. So we don't have this happening for John spelled out, but we do for Jesus. So we have the time of purification for the law of Moses. Joseph and Mary brought Jesus up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. Reference specific translate refers to Joseph and Mary. Okay, they're not giving us information there. So the purification is going to be Mary for 7 days. If you have a boy child, it's purification 14 days. If you have a female child, so it should be in coinciding with the 8th day of going up and dedicating at the temple. Mary brought Jesus to Jerusalem and presented him to the Lord, just as it was written in the law of the Lord. Every firstborn male will be set apart to the Lord and to offer a sacrifice according to what is specified in the law, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. So there is other sacrifices that are made, but if you are not a wealthy family, you could bring a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. So the fact that it is mentioned here is telling us that Mary and Joseph are not well off. Now, there was a man in Jerusalem who named Simeon, who was righteous and devout, looking for the restoration of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him. It was revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's Christ. See what we have here in the footnote on the Christ. Is it going to say Messiah? Yes, Messiah or Christ. So Simeon is a righteous man. He is serving the Lord. The Holy Spirit is upon him, and he is not going to die until he sees the anointed one of God. So Simeon, directed by the Spirit, came to the temple courts, and when the parents brought the child, Jesus, to do for him what was customary according to the law, Simeon took him in his arms and blessed God, saying, so, Simeon does not work in the temple, it does not appear. Simeon is a righteous man who shows up at the time that Jesus happens to be being dedicated. And when Jesus is being dedicated, Simeon comes up and takes hold of him. Now, if you go to the temple on a regular basis, you probably are going to be familiar with Simeon. So not a total stranger. I'm going to make an assumption here that would be unfamiliar with Mary and Joseph, but still, hey, well, how would you like it? Someone from church, yeah, you recognize their face. Maybe you know who they are. You're bringing your baby into church for the first time, and they go and they pick up your baby without asking, and they start speaking over your baby. Like, that's the image I have here. Now, according to your word, sovereign Lord, permit your servant to depart in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory to your people Israel. So, God, thank you for letting me see this. The Messiah is here for the Gentiles and for your people. So the child, father and mother were amazed at what was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to his mother. So he blessed them, so he blesses the child. Then he blesses Mary and Joseph, and now he's going to do a third blessing to Mary. But we don't have what the blessing was to Mary and Joseph. Now to Mary alone. Or maybe it was he blessed them and said to the mother, so we just don't get Joseph's blessing, we just get Mary's blessing. So either there was one to both of them together and then a separate for Mary, or there's one for Joseph and now a third one for Mary. Let's hear this one. Listen carefully, this child is destined to be the cause of the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be rejected. Indeed, as a result of him, the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and the sword will pierce your own soul as well. Not really what you want to hear. Not really what you want to hear. Hey, he is going to cause a lot of things to happen in the country, among the people, and BT dubs, a sword is going to pierce your heart, your soul as well. You're going to have much sorrow because of your son. Like, that's not what you want to hear when your kid is 8 days old. You barely got a chance to enjoy being a mother yet. You're figuring it out, and you're told that this child is going to cause you sorrow and distress. Well, on some level, that's pretty much every kid. There are things that will cause you sorrow and distress because you're a parent. So, but here he is speaking, of course, towards the end of Jesus' ministry with his death. And before that, he's going to cause the hearts of many to be revealed, whether they are following after God or whether they are selfish and following after their own ways. So we have Simeon, let's back up. Who has validated so far who Jesus is? We have the angel who validates. We have Elizabeth who validates. We have the shepherds who validate. And now we have Simeon who validates. And now we're going to go to the fifth one. Anna is going to validate. And notice, Anna is a prophetess. She is a prophetess, okay? There's no question about her. She's one of those who gives declarations over the people, instructions, if we go back to that. Anyway, so she is a prophetess. So certainly in a position of leadership of some kind. Anna, the daughter of Penuel of the tribe of Asher. So we get what tribe she's from. She was very old, having been married to her husband for 7 years until his death. She has lived as a widow since then for 84 years. She never left the temple, worshiping with fasting and prayer night and day. So let's just go what we have here in the 84 years. living with her husband for 7 years from her virginity, and she was a widow for 84 years. The chronology of the 84 years is unclear, since the final phrase could mean she was widowed until the age of 84. However, the more natural way to take the syntax is referring to the length of her widowhood, the subject of the clause. Okay, so we're not clear. Is she a widow for 84 years, or she was a widow ever since, and she is 84 years old? I don't think it makes a difference. One thing I do want to point out, if she never leaves the temple, she hasn't been doing it, I don't think, for the entirety of since she was a widow. Because if she had been menstruating, she would have had to have left the temple because she would have been unclean. So maybe she initially does work in the temple as a prophetess, but has to leave the temple from time to time. But it was so customary and she's been there for so long. Luke just words it as she never left the temple, worshiping and fasting and praying night and day. So she is constantly in the mode of fasting and prayer night and day. At the moment she came up to them and began to give thanks to God about the child, to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. So she comes up. So after Simeon comes, we have Anna the prophetess who comes in. Gastrova 24. So when Joseph and Mary had performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and favor of God was upon them. So we have them going to Bethlehem for the birth, returning to Jerusalem for the dedication, and then going back to Nazareth after that. So we have Matthew's gospel with the after the wise men, which is after a couple of years, going down to Egypt and returning. Let's see if that happens in any way here that we can put that together. If not, it doesn't matter. This is how Luke is telling the story. He's including the things he thinks are important to have us. Yeah, so Goose, I was thinking that after I looked at it a second time. Goose Strova. So most people call you Goose. Yeah. All right. Welcome in. So we don't get any more on what Anna does. Anna's a prophetess. So probably going to have things that are similar to what we had in Simeon. We don't have anything else. We just have another person validating who Jesus is. We have the constant proclamation here in the beginning of who Jesus is. And the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. Now Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem every year for the feast of Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. But when the feast was over, as they were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but because they assumed that he was with their group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they began to look for him among the relatives and acquaintances. Okay, this story. Hey, Father Hunman and Christopher, welcome in. This is one of those stories that a lot of people are like, how could this happen? How could this happen? Well, it's not necessarily the same way that we would have. You have a whole bunch of family that are all traveling together. You're all along the road. Cousins might be playing with cousins, hanging out together, and you're walking or riding, and you're all going to make the journey together. We don't have to count how many seatbelts we have and make sure everybody's got a car and all of that. You got a whole lot of flexibility of what's happening. And so everybody knows it's time to go home, and you would assume your son, who's 12, knows it's time to go home, and he's on his way home. And all of a sudden, you're like, hey, wait, we haven't seen him, and you start looking around for him. So it is a lot more plausible when you understand the way that ancient people would have traveled together. Goose, could you imagine losing your son, losing the Son of God? Feel bad, bro. Yeah. It's easy enough in Home Alone. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Home Alone, it's like we sit there laughing at it impractically, but it's also one of those things where you look at how many people were in Home Alone and had to travel, and you have so many other vehicles, and you just assume he's with someone else. It can happen there very easily, as opposed to if it's just a nuclear family where it's mom, dad, and 2 kids, and you leave one behind, or 3 kids, you leave one behind. It's kind of like obvious when that happens. But bring in extended family, and it becomes more possible. Now, originally, when we read the Old Testament, there are 3 festivals you're supposed to go up to Jerusalem. It sounds like the Jesus parents did what was the minimum level. Some people went to 1 festival a year, or the way that Luke is just telling it is he's only talking about this festival, and they do indeed go every year. So he could just be talking in that regards, not necessarily referring to everything else. So there's going to be a new version of Home Alone. Interesting. Okay. When he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. So they went according to what they did. They're traveling along. They go a day's journey. Now they're spending a day trying to find him. So we're on day 2. When they didn't find him, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts. Let me see what I have on 3 days. So if it's a day out, a looking for him a day, and a day back, that could be our 3 days. 3 days means there was 1 day out, another back, and a 3rd day to look for him in Jerusalem. Well, we also have they're looking for him on the day, and then a day back, and 3rd day. Anyway, there's a way to count it more of a day out, a look for him a day back, and a day to look for him. Anyway. They find him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. So, who are these teachers? The only place in Luke's gospel the term teacher is applied to the Jews. Oh, so he uses this for them one time here, and we must not use it again because it's the only time they were doing what they should do. And all who heard Jesus were astonished at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were overwhelmed. His mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been looking for you anxiously." But he replied, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know I must be in my father's house?" Yet his parents did not understand the remark he made to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them, but his mother kept all these things in her heart. So again, we have the reference to Mary treasuring the events that are happening and chronicling them in essence. So, and we have that throughout Luke's gospel, that Mary is chronicling and storing up the stories of everything happening. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. Let me come back to that. Let me go back up to. They find him and he says, "I must be about my father's house," referring to the Heavenly Father, to be in the temple. "Didn't you know I must be here?" Well, we were at the Passover. We were done. Why didn't you come with? That would be the thing. So no, they didn't know. And yes, he did cause his parents anxiety. But he's curious, why were you looking for me? So it doesn't think he's doing it intentionally. There's no malice on his part. Okay. So one of these things, one of the weird things that I don't have an answer for, but does stature mean that he got taller or that more people thought he was a worthy leader? So the stature of the community. I believe it is the stature as far as reputation and community. So he is growing in wisdom and stature, but stature, since he's 12 years old, could also mean that. Let's go look it up just to make sure. So verse 52, tip of the cap, Christopher, tip of the cap. And then we have a redeem of no cap. All the way at the bottom. Helikia. Okay, so age, time of life, age, term, or length of life. Adult age, maturity, suitable age for anything, metaphorical to attain, state, fit for a thing, stature, height, comeliness, or of stature. So, yeah. So it's a way of talking about his growth of life. Is that like a new ice cream, Helikia? So he is growing in every way possible. He's growing in wisdom. He's growing in favor with God and people. He's growing in stature, in height, and all of those things. So here's one of those things that's interesting to me is Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Then how does he grow in wisdom? How does he increase in wisdom? How does he increase in favor with God and with people. Well, with people, I get it. How does he grow in stature? Jesus was an infant, so he has to have changed. So when we say Jesus is the same today and forever, or yesterday, today, and forever, I don't think that we need to backroll that to infancy. I don't think we have to backroll that into 12 years old. I think we roll that from his resurrection forward, because he has a resurrected body. So from the point of resurrection forward, Jesus is the same. Now, some will argue that that would diminish the Jesus is the same today and forever, or yesterday, today, and forever. I don't see it as diminishing it. I see it as acknowledging it, his humanity and his resurrected stature moving forward. But here's one of those places you have to wrestle through with: if Jesus is growing in knowledge, if Jesus is growing in favor, how does he do that if he's the same yesterday, today, and forever? To me, it simply means he was fully human, and as human, he does that, and he needs to do that.